Hey guys, Erin here again. I'm back to share with you another big mistake that candidates are making on the CPA exam. We're going to be sharing lots of tips and tools for the CPA exam over the next couple of months. But what I wanted to focus on first is my 10 biggest mistakes that I see people making. Because I want to first help you avoid these mistakes that others have made. And then we can look at being proactive in other ways in terms of tools and strategies for the exam. So the number 2 most common mistake that I see people making, I think most people can relate to. So when I first started taking the exam, I remember I was working in public accounting at the time, and I had ordered my study materials. They arrived in a big box in my mailbox, so everyone knew, oh, those are the study materials, Erin's getting started. And what started happening was I was getting advice from everyone who had been there before me, everyone who I worked with who had passed their exams. They made a point to stop by my desk, message me or send me an email to share how they approached and how they ultimately were successful with their exams. And I have to tell you, I was super grateful for that advice at the time because I didn't really know how I was going to approach the exam. This was a big challenge, and it was something that I had no experience with. So I was sort of going to wing it. But I got all this advice, and after a little while, I started to notice some of this advice from people that I know and respect and really trust is contradicting itself, right? What one manager told me to do was completely opposite of what another manager told me to do. And I was left confused. What am I going to do now, right? I had no idea then what the best approach was going to be. And that left me sort of spinning and almost afraid to get started because I didn't know what the best approach was. And so you may have already experienced this where people have shared with you maybe unsolicited advice coming from well-meaning friends and colleagues, or you might as you get started with your exam journey. So what should we do about it instead? There's a couple of key distinctions that I wanted to share with you. And that is definitely seek advice, right? In some cases, you can't even avoid it. People are going to give it to you whether you asked for it or not. But in other cases, you might be the one out there asking and soliciting this advice, and that's okay. But what I encourage you to do is to consider your learning style and consider what worked for you in the past, maybe when you were studying for exams in college, for instance. Because what worked for one person is not necessarily going to work for you. Or if we talk to your best friend, it might not work for them. So you have to be aware of what's going to work for you and be listening for that. Listening for those little nuggets of advice that your colleagues or your friends are giving you, but specifically be listening for, would that approach work for me? Because just because it worked for them and just because you trust them and you like working with them and they're good friends of yours, doesn't mean that you have to take their approach. And a lot of times when I see people failing the exam, it's because the approach they had taken was not the most effective approach for them. So consider that in choosing how you're going to approach the exam and in whose advice you're going to take. Of course, be grateful for any advice that they give you. They just want to help you out in the process. They just want to see you succeed. Thank them and choose the approach that's going to work best for you and have success on your CPA exam journey.